I just have this image in my mind of him sitting there at lunch. It's like, oh, look at this. It's this time. It's spring, and I'm having lunch, and everything around here has really big shadows. I remember when I had lunch in Greece, in Athens, and the shadows were a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
want to do an experiment.
Yeah.
I want to do there's an important part of science is curiosity, right? You need to notice things and say, "Huh, I wonder why this happens," and then say, "Well, let me do some measurements. Let me see if I can figure this out."
3, 2, 1. Welcome to Love Machine.
Welcome to another episode of Nerding Out with That Nerdy Catholic. I'm Seth Payne, and I'm here with my ever co-nerd Cesar. We are getting into our series on physics. And before we get into today's episode, I want to remind you, if you go to thatnerdycatholic.com, you can sign up for our email list, get an update on when we're putting new things out, new things that are happening, and any new developments. If you go to thatnerdycatholic.com/merch, you can get some cool merch. We got our new Father of the Big Bang shirt. Further up and further in, one of my favorite shirts, mashup of Doctor Who and C.S. Lewis. You can get some mugs with our logos on it and everything. If you go to thatnerdycatholic.com/support, you can sign up to support us financially, and any support, whether buying our merch or helping us through the support page, any financial support is really appreciated. Help us keep the lights on, keep the website going and everything. So, Cesar, where are we going today?
Oh, we are still in Greece.
Mm-hmm.
So we are going to talk about the first man to measure the circumference of the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So this episode is about Eratosthenes.
Yeah. So last week we talked about Anaximander and just the beginning of the development of physics, and I think it's going to be interesting. She said Eratosthenes was the first to measure the circumference of the Earth, and so we have this huge leap we're going to be talking about today.
Yes.
And not just the development of physics, but the development of our understanding of the world.
That's a very good point, because if we talk about Anaximander, he's the first person that we know that thought about the Earth floating in the space and all the celestial bodies out there. No, we are still moving forward with the understanding of the world. We are moving forward actually 400 years more, because we are talking about Eratosthenes, who was born in 276 before Christ and died in 194 before Christ. But his conception was the Earth is round. No, the Earth is round, and but I think we are jumping ahead. Let's go into the deal.
Let's start from the beginning.
Yes. So he was an ancient Greek mathematician and physicist, geographer, and of course, poet and astronomer. That's a really nice combination there.
Yeah.
You get, mathematician, physics, geographer, astronomer, and poet. But, well, that's how he is, no? As we said before, he was born in Cyrene in 276 before Christ. And by that time, just years before, Cyrene was conquered by Alexander the Great. So Cyrene sits what is right now modern Libya. So, and then Alexander the Great conquered it and make all this zone of Africa part of Greece too. And that means that it has its advantages, because when Alexander conquers Cyrene in, I think it's 332 before Christ, he establishes Cyrene as the capital of the Pentapolis. No, and that means he has the Greek gymnasium, and in that gymnasium, Eratosthenes was educated.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
so that's one thing that we have to establish there. No, and the other thing is that besides being taught and being educated in that gymnasium, when he grew up, he further do more studies in Athens.
Okay.
Let's remember that Athens was the capital of the wisdom and
Yeah,
knowledge.
it's kind of the intellectual center of the world. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. No, so we are talking about a very well educated man for his time. No,
So you could say it's kind of like he was sent off to Harvard.
yes, that's right. And then we got to think about that because after being educated in Athens, he goes back, and he is also a chief librarian in Alexandria's library, one of the biggest library in the ancient world,
Yeah.
and contains the wisdom of the ancient world in that library. No,
For the whole world.
yes,
Not
for
just the Greek world, but the whole world.
the whole world.
Yeah.
That's a very important point.
Oh, the whole world that they knew at that point.
Yes, yeah. Probably there were nothing about America's
Yeah.
world, but
Yeah.
at that point, yes.
Yeah.
No, and parenthesis open here. It is interesting that Alexandria, when it was burned, we weren't able to recover 90% of that wisdom. We lost that forever. No, but well, there's a man here that after being educated in Athens, start a work as a career in Alexandria Library. In that position, he was able to access a lot of knowledge, No, so that is just to set up the frame of who was really Eratosthenes here. No, one of the things that his founder is the scientific chronology. No, he has at his hand Persian and Egyptian records, no? And was able to date, Troy War in 1133 before Christ. He was able to date that based on the information that he found in the library. No,
Yeah.
then he wrote a book called Theater Chronographies. No, and depicted some importance of dates beginning on the beginning of the Trojan War. No, so
No, I'm sure he didn't actually say that it happened, that the Trojan War happened at 1133 BC.
yes,
But you look at
so we are
ancient writings.
Yes.
You look at you look at the Bible. You look at the Old Testament. How things were referenced as far as when they happened, and that it would say in the third year of King so and so.
Yes.
And so there were the way things were dated were relative to important people, important things. But yet to have this idea of, well, let's try and put it all together and have one framework for it.
Yes.
I mean, it's one of those things there's, I'm sure, thousands of things that we take for granted, but there's so many things we take for granted that, well, of course you have a date system that everything can be referenced to each other. Well, this happened, 6 years and 3 months before something else,
Yes.
But to realize, like everything else, that had to be developed.
Yes. The thing is that with 2 or 3 different, cultures as a reference, no? We are mentioned Egyptian and we are mentioned Persian cultures. So he was able to, this event happened in this time, this event happened in this time. So we got some estimation for the Trojan War here, no?
Yeah.
And that is something really important, no? So we are looking at a man that is trying to use the information in order to keep into the conclusion. That's the very that's a very important distinction from a scientific approach of chronology and saying, well, the gods has found it, and
Yeah.
mythology.
Yeah.
There's a distinction here, no?
Yeah. Well, we're thinking about the dates. I think is so interesting is that a huge development like that takes time to propagate out,
Yeah.
and so we still have debates on exactly what year Christ was born,
Yes.
because in the gospel it says it's referenced the date of his birth is referenced against the reign of kings.
Yes,
And not it didn't say at this date, 3 years after such and such.
yes.
That's just how things were measured then.
Exactly, and yes, that's right. It was in whatever year of the reign of Augustus Emperor, in
Tiberius.
Tiberius, no, and for the Jewish reference, they say when this high priest was in this whatever year of the high priest, no. So that's a relative reference. That's correct. Yes, totally agree with you. No. On the other hand, there's another method. As a mathematician, he came with the method of the sieve of Eratosthenes. It's a method to find what are the prime numbers. No, so you start writing the numbers, then you start which is the first number. We got 2, and then all the multipliers of 2, 4, 6, 8.
Yeah.
And then we got 3, all the multipliers of 3. And at the end, you have the numbers that they are not multipliers or anyone.
If nothing is crossed out. Yeah, and it's a neat image of the sieve that you're putting all these numbers.
Yes.
And if it's caught, if you're crossing anything out, I think it's being caught by the sieve. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that's him on math, no? We talk about this when we talk about Anaximander, no? That there was the earth and the celestial body. So how can we represent that? He came up with the device called armillary sphere. So and that is exactly what you have concentric circles that can be moving around one on the other. That is the first representation of course. They were thinking the Earth was the center, no, and all the celestial bodies around. But that's one of the first representations on the view world. And let's remember that device was used, for centuries until we change our worldview. No? So that he's the inventor of the arm.
Well, and that was more than 1,500 years later.
Yes. That's true.
It lasted for a long time.
It lasted for a long time, no? So we do know the contributions of Eratosthenes, not because of his writing per se, because we have his writing laws, but for reference for another historian and also mathematician who is Cleomenes, no? And he is the one that says that Eratosthenes calculated the method, no? And he write about his method, no? So this is the biggest achieve of Eratosthenes in his lifetime, measuring the circumference of the Earth.
Yeah.
So we have to picture right now that, first of all, we are dealing with a person that is, again, changing the worldview, that instead of a circular disk Earth that Anaximander proposes, he's proposing a sphere here. So he is really close to our world, to our concept of how Earth is. No? And the second thing is that it is very important to notice that how he came up with this concept of the sphere of the Earth, no? So there are 2 cities here, no? And the technique that he used to measure the Earth is by comparing the shadow. If you put a vertical pole in the shadow of one city, and that while the sun is there, you see the shadow on that vertical pole, and you find another city when there's no shadow then he said, hey, this is weird. Why in the same moment, in one place there's a shadow and another place there is not?
Yeah.
So there might be something that is
Yeah.
that it just makes sense if the Earth is a sphere.
Yeah. Well, and you think of all the other things that have needed to have been developed to be able to do that experiment. You have to be able to have a precise measurement of time
Yes.
to know that at this time, because you can't be, I mean, they weren't close.
Yes.
They were far from each other, these two locations.
Yes.
You have to know that at this time in both spots. So you have to be able to measure the time precisely. So that's one part of, as we talked about before, it's an important part of the development of anything in science or math, but more so I think in science, that the tools of measurement need to get up to a certain precision
Yes.
in order to be able to make any discovery.
Or we have to have the tools that
Right.
we already didn't
Or you
have.
have to develop the tools.
Yes.
And so the fact that he was able to make that precise measurement in time and in location. Now I feel like this is probably something that has been lost to history. I'm just really curious what made him think to even try this.
Yeah.
I mean, I have this image in my mind of someone that as you said, he went to Greece. He worked at the Library of Alexandria, so he traveled a lot. He traveled great distances to go these different places. I just have this image in my mind of him sitting there at lunch. It's like, oh, look at this. It's this time. It's spring, and I'm having lunch, and everything around here has really big shadows. I remember when I had lunch in Greece, in Athens, and the shadows were a lot longer. I want to do an experiment.
Yeah.
I want to do. There's an important part of science is curiosity, right? You need to notice things and say, "Huh, I wonder why this happens," and then say, "Well, let me do some measurements. Let me see if I can figure this out."
Yes. And the thing here is that one thing is that you have the observation, but another thing, as you said, is the curiosity to make that happen. But the most impressive thing about Eratosthenes, I'm going to jump here to his achievement, is that when he calculates the circumference of the Earth, he estimated that 252,000 stadia. For the stadia was the measurement that the Greeks used, which is equivalent on around 39,000 to 40 kilometers, or between 24,000 to 25,000 miles. No? So that is the result of the measurement of the circumference of the Earth from Eratosthenes. We have to take into account that right now that we can measure with more precision, he has an error less than 2%. And we are talking about a Greek that lived 200 years before Christ.
Yeah.
Imagine that precision for him.
Well, and like we were talking about in the series on math, you looked at the development of just measuring the circumference of a circle. We have passages in the Old Testament that use 3 for measuring
pi,
and for pi, and the development of how the Greeks were only to be able to get that to like 6 places after the decimal point. So, you this is a world where even the measurement of a circle is the precision is slowly getting more precise.
Yes.
So to say that he measured something that went far beyond he could even ever imagine traveling himself.
That's true. That's true. And that's all because of that good understanding of math. Remember, by that time, if you have see the episodes of math, at that time we already have angles and trigonometry
Yeah.
very well understood.
Yeah.
So without that, you cannot do this. No. So kind of what was the how can he measure that? So let's take the figure here. He compared the shadows of two cities, no, Alexandria and Syene, which is the actual Aswan right now. No? So those two cities are separated among 5,000 stadia, which is around 800 kilometers or 500 miles. Okay, so we got that distance. He put a vertical pole in both sides, and he waits until one is more down to the equator, which is Syene, and then at north, 5,000 stadia, we got Alexandria. So when in Syene you have no shadow, he measured the shadow in Alexandria, and then he takes the angle of that shadow. And then he said, okay, I will need to measure with the greatest precision this distance. No? And this is something really important because the historians say that there were professionals at that time to meet great distances. No? And these professionals were the bematists. So these were people that have a standard unit of measurement, and he repeated from point A to point B how many times that unit is. And it you have to pay these guys a lot of time because to do that in 500 miles,
Yeah.
Okay, 1, 2, how many? So that was he was able to do that measurement with the help of the professionals of that time to have the precise distance. He has the precise angle there, and he was measured. He was, and of course, a very very well developed value of p, because with p just free, you don't have that precision. Really. No.
So my brother-in-law is a surveyor, and so he owns a small surveying company out in Illinois, and his job, he has to go and for contracts or people selling a house or whatever, he has to go and he has to measure someone's property very precisely.
Yeah.
So and he's told me stories of different jobs he's been on. The amount of work he has to do to measure someone's backyard for a fence is a lot of work. So yeah, I can just imagine having to hire someone to say, all right, I need you to measure precisely how far Syene is from Alexandria.
Yeah.
I need to be exact, as precise as you can be.
Yes.
And with the tools that they have at the time, I'm sure that was not an easy task.
No, definitely not an easy task. No, but having this idea of how does this went, so he was able to determine if 1/5 of a circle, which is the angle that he gets from that measurement, it's around 5,000 stadia. Then the complete circle, it's 50 times more of that, so 250,000 stadia, which is equivalent to 40,000 kilometers or 25,000 miles. which is, as we said, an error of the circumference of the Earth less than 2%.
Yeah.
I mean, very precise.
Yeah.
Very precise. High trigonometry, a bigger value of p than just p.3. And I remember p.3 was King Solomon for building the temple, no? And we are talking King Solomon. We are talking about 1,000 years before Christ.
Yeah. So to have, as you're saying, the precision of pi growing to 6, 7 places, decimal places, that we can to be able to be less than 2% off.
Yes.
For the diameter of Earth is incredible.
Yes, definitely. So there's this, but this is the greatest achievement that we have from Eratosthenes. We have other achievement too, no? So let's say he used during his time when he was in the Library of Alexandria, he calculated that there have to be 365 days a year, but then on the fourth day we'll have to have 366.
Yeah. So he came up with the leap year.
Yes.
Wow.
That's a great achievement.
Well, and the fact that was not. I mean, it was hundreds and hundreds of years before that became the norm for everyone.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. To be the first to do one thing,
and even
is amazing.
Yeah.
To be the first person to say that the world is a sphere, to measure the size of the Earth, to realize, oh, wait a second, here's the exact length of a year, but as we've said before, that with no concept of what a year actually means, because there was no concept of the Earth going around the sun.
Yeah, that's right. So you put me to think about that right now. They might have the Earth as at the center of the universe. They would just say, okay, when the sun is here as an equinox, then how much time take again to have the sun rising in that position?
They had images. They could track the movement of the celestial bodies.
Yeah.
So you have there is a concept of from any one point in the Earth through the span of a year at a specific time, like we talked about before. Now that they have a rather precise measurement of time, at noon every day of the year, the position of the sun changes.
Yeah.
And so you have this. You have this figure eight of the position of the sun throughout the year.
Yes.
So to be able to say, with those measurements, even without knowing that the Earth went around the sun, to say, we know that the sun tracks this movement throughout the year. So to be able to measure how long is it going to take for the Earth the sun to get back to this position?
Yes.
And then to be able to do it with the precision to say, okay, this 365 days a year, but every 4 years, if we only do 365 days, that's going to shift a little bit. So we need to add a day.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really amazing, no? The other great accomplishment is that he discovered that the axis of the Earth is not vertical, that is tilted 32. He said that it was tilted 7.2 degrees. It is actually tilted 23.5 degrees, but to notice that the Earth is tilted, that's an accomplishment. I would count that as an accomplishment. No, so that's one of the big another big accomplishment that we have from him. No.
Mm-hmm.
Then he start, and this is probably outside because of the precision of the instrument. He claimed that the sun was 27 times bigger than the Earth. No? We not right now know that the sun is 109 times bigger than the Earth, but at least to have an approximate, to say that this sun is this much time bigger, and this is when we start meeting, the precision of the instrument. No? We have to take into account what instruments, how was he able to make that measurement, and then to say 20 times, and then so with the technology of that time, he was able to make a very good precision with the circumference of the Earth, but not ready yet to make a measurement of how big is the sun.
Well, and you talked about the destruction of the Library of Alexandria.
Yes.
And how much ancient knowledge was lost.
Yes.
I just wonder how much was written that we've lost. I mean, we've lost. You said 90% of what was in
of the books. Yes.
But I'm sure it was. If you think about all of the knowledge of that era, I'm sure we've lost a lot more than 90%. There's so much we don't know, and one of the sciences of the people do now of looking at archaeology, looking at trying to reconstruct the past. We don't know a lot about his life. We don't know a lot about a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
We don't know why he did what he did.
Yeah.
We don't know why he one day decided to say, maybe the Earth is a sphere. Yeah. This is as far back as he knew. All of human history. Everyone said that the Earth is a plane. There's the heavens above, and there's the underworld,
yes.
underworld below. So why would he do that? I mean, that as long as we're on this planet, I don't think we'll ever know.
Yeah.
So an important part of the scientific method, the scientific discovery, curiosity we've talked about, the development of precision, but the willingness to say something that we've known up to this point is true might not be true.
Yeah.
And so what does that take? That takes curiosity. That takes courage.
Yes.
I'm sure there were a number of people that did not like him because he was saying that the world is different than everyone
thought about
in human history up to that point thought was true.
Yes, yes. And that's another point that I want to highlight that you said, because in the final achievement that we have here is, Eratosthenes found the distance between the Earth and the Sun. We don't know how, if it wasn't because of Eusebius of Caesarea, which is he's also a Greek astronomer, but after, I think 100 or 200 after Christ, we wouldn't know about this thing. But because we lost much of this information, we don't know how he was able to claim the sun is this far from the Earth. We lost that information. Even though we didn't know about Eratosthenes here, if it wasn't for furthermore Greek astronomer and physicists that reference him.
Mm-hmm.
So what we know about him is not because of his handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
Probably lost again, as I said, in the burn of Alexandria. It makes
Mm-hmm.
sense that he being in Alexandria, he might wrote about how the calculations.
Well, he's a librarian, so
Yes.
I'm sure it was part of his discipline to
Yes, to
keep
document
records,
that.
yeah.
Exactly. But we lost that. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's not because of another reference from people hundreds of years after that, hey, this guy did, we wouldn't know about him.
Mm-hmm.
No? So it's really important because most of ancient history, we don't have any original records.
Mm-hmm.
We have the records of a copy of somebody that makes a copy of a copy of that. No? But this is a nice thing about physics and math, that even if you have that copy, if that copy makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
if the methodology written in that copy makes sense, then you know it's true.
Right. Yeah, you can follow the logic
Exactly.
of a
Or redo the experimentation that is written there, no? And
yeah.
compare the conclusions of that experimentation.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of this.
Yeah.
We don't have to speculate about that.
Yeah. Well, it makes me so thankful that there are people that did, even in our reference, almost 2,000 years ago, but from the reference of him a few hundred years later, decided to reference and record what they knew of him.
Yeah.
That they could that we now have records of his life and what he did. It's so important to record your own life, record what you know, record what you know of what people knew before you, to keep a record of what's going on in the world. I'm sure. I think about our current technology of saving everything to our computer. Who knows if that is going to survive?
Yeah.
Who knows what because we live right now, because we know what we know right now. It is so easy to think, it's like, well, everything we know right now will survive. People will know everything that we know right now. But 1,000, 2,000 years ago, what knowledge of what is happening right now is going to survive?
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee. The Library of Alexandria was seen as this incredible achievement, gathering knowledge throughout the whole world. And yet we've lost most of that knowledge. It puts so much stuff into perspective.
Yes. I want to also highlight when you do, so from Eratosthenes, I want to highlight another thing regarding the scientific method. How important is to be, you mentioned observation, curiosity part, to ask, the correct questions, which is the hypothesis, even though it is not the normal knowledge, that to defy that normal knowledge, to have some courage on there. And then to create an experiment to prove your point. And in that experiment, to be as precise as possible. No? Those are very important things, very important 3 steps in the scientific method.
Yeah.
No? I want to highlight this because this Greek, living more than 200 years before Christ, doing these 3 things, very well done.
Yeah.
He was able to do that achievement.
Yeah. Yeah.
No?
And he was able to change the view of the world forever.
Yeah. That's right.
And as we'll see, as we continue this series, that is going to happen over and over again, and it's still happening. We are getting every I mean, at this point now, every decade,
Yeah.
we're getting a clearer view of what the universe looks like from the very largest to the very smallest. And so everything we do, we can look back to Eratosthenes and say, look what you started.
Yeah.
Look what, him and all of his contemporaries, they started this process of looking at the world as objectively as they could and say, how do I understand the world better?
And there's another point here, because I think we mentioned, or we know that in current day, there are people that still believe that the Earth is flat, And I wanna highlight this because there might be some skepticism about the results, but if we have, the conversation with this approach, okay, why do you believe the Earth is flat? This guy didn't have a GPS. This guy didn't have Google Earth. This guy didn't have satellites. And he was able to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
How can we approach, the conversation starting, okay, why, I want to understand why do you believe the Earth is flat? And then agree on an experiment and do together the experiment and let the conclusions speak for themselves.
Yeah.
If that person is pursuing the truth, then he will. But if that person is just believing because he wants to believe that, then okay, you can continue to believe that.
Right,
But
and there's no argument that can be used.
Exactly.
So have you heard of the final experiment?
No.
So there was a group that this is just within the last month or two. There was a group that went to Antarctica to film the 24-hour sun.
Okay.
Because they're one of the main one argument that a lot of flat Earth people that believe that the Earth is flat say is, with the image of the Earth that they have, how the sun moves. They say you can't have a 24-hour sun in Antarctica if Antarctica is on the rim of the Earth.
Yeah. Yes.
It's impossible to have a 24-hour sun because the sun would be moving around.
Yeah.
So they brought a few people who are YouTubers who talk about the Earth being flat, who believe that the Earth is flat, and a few that that talk about the Earth being round. Brought them all to Antarctica and say, we're going to film, all of us together, we're going to film
24 hours.
the 24-hour sun as a final proof that the Earth is round and not flat. Well, the funny thing is, most people who talked about, who believed that the Earth is flat didn't want to go.
Oh.
And the few that did were at one point had been respected as talking about the Earth being flat. The moment they went, so many flat Earth people then immediately said, well, now we can't trust them.
Yeah.
There's as you said, you need an important part. We've talked about this a number of times. An important part of the scientific discovery, the scientific process, is the humility to say, here's my hypothesis.
Yes.
I'm gonna do an experiment to try and prove it. But I might be proven wrong.
Yes.
And a hypothesis that is proven wrong in many ways is better than a hypothesis that's proven right.
Yeah.
Because either way, you have gained knowledge and understanding.
That's true.
And so and as we've talked about before, when you have a worldview that is so rigid and so cannot be moved,
Yeah.
so that there's no experiment that could prove your worldview wrong, well, then that's an issue with your worldview.
And you make an important distinction, because one is a worldview based on science, which is, as you mentioned, you have your observation, you do your hypothesis, you do your experiment, and you are willing to take your results based on each step that has been done properly. Okay, I am gaining knowledge. If you say no, I beyond the results, I'm not going to believe, then it's not a scientific worldview, it's a religious worldview. It's a dogmatic worldview. And then you cannot claim on that basis that any other dogmatic worldview, because you are being dogmatic. It's very important, and I would like to share this with our audiences here. No, it's nothing wrong to say, I don't think this is true because of this. It is wrong to say, I think it's true because I just heard of.
I heard something. Someone said this, and I think it's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
No? It's either you, okay, why do you think it's true? Explain the reasoning why, or run the experiments, and then with that we can have a conversation. And that's a scientific conversation, no? But saying no, it's not true because the actual belief or the actual knowledge says it's not giving you any credit, no? And this is, I think, also some approach that we can learn if we find people that, for example, think that the Earth is flat. We can approach with that, okay, I want to understand why. I want to understand, what do you believe? Can we share? Do you believe that if you can run an experiment and prove me why you say it's right, then let's talk about that. No, but if beyond that people still believe what they want to believe, well, it's their thing. But it is not anymore a scientific belief. It's a dogmatic belief.
One of the reasons why we're doing any of this, all these videos, is there are a lot of people that believe that anyone who's religious has to have that same sort of rigidity in their view of the world, as if we all say the Earth is flat. Well, there's nothing you can say that's going to
change my
mind.
Yeah.
You look at, as we talked about before, you look at the worldview before, in the ancient world, you have the earth, you have the underworld, you have the sky, the low heavens and the higher heavens, and you can have this image of God sitting up, actually literally sitting in a throne up in the higher heavens, looking down. And you have all the other ancient religions. You have the gods up in the heavens, or in a physical location.
Yes.
So if you have an image, well, that is who God is, and that can't change. Well, then no argument is going to make you want to believe that the Earth is any different than we've always thought it was. But as we've said a number of times, our view of God doesn't get diminished by anything we've discovered. If anything, our view of God continues to grow. And it's not a God of the gaps. It's not a God. We believe in an infinite God. Whether you believe in the Christian view of God or not, if you can say, and I've heard a number of prominent scientists have said things along this line of like, okay, well, I could believe in a God that's out there somewhere who's big enough and could create everything. I don't personally believe that he did, and I don't know how he did, but I could see that happening. That's our view of God.
Yes.
That if you look at the arguments that a lot of modern atheists make against religion, they're arguing against this very small view of God
Yes.
from the ancient world.
Yeah.
And arguing as if people today still had that same smaller view of God.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we want to do here is we want to constantly show that it is not a contradiction to want to study any area of science that we can find, to see in experimentation, how does this change our view of the world? How does, looking at the size of the universe, looking at, what we've discovered about anything, things that happen on the quantum level, how that changes our view of the world. And the fact that you can study that and still say, oh my goodness, what an amazing world God created.
Yes.
I don't know how he did it, but one of the things, the last thing I want to say is, what's one word that we use a lot when we're talking about our view of God, or how God did things, or we use the word mystery. It's a mystery, and it's not it's not the the definition of mystery of, well, here's something we don't know, but at some point we'll solve this mystery.
Yes.
It's a mystery that has to remain a mystery because we can't understand it. And to say that there are things that we can't understand does not mean that we don't want to continue to grow our understanding.
That's correct.
We're not saying, it's all a mystery. We're not supposed to ask anything. What we can understand, we want to continue to grow our understanding.
That's right.
But the humility to say, there are some things we just might not be able to understand.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that you think that with the scientific discovery that we have, we will grab all the knowledge. What happened is that with every scientific discovery, we open a new kind of world of possibilities.
Well, yeah, every discovery has, like 100 more questions than answers.
Exactly. That's right. We get one answer, we create 100 more questions. You're totally right.
Yeah. And so as we're continuing this journey through the history of physics, I think that's going to become even more clear. But I love this. I love this conversation. It's looking back at where we came from, the scientific method, every single scientist has to look back at Eratosthenes and say thank you for your courage to say, you know what, everyone has said something. Everyone has said that the Earth is flat. I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I feel like it's different, and I'm gonna experiment, and I'm gonna show that the Earth is not the way people have said for all of human history.
And that's a very good point. And this is how this scientific conversation should come, no? Because I'm sure that probably before Eratosthenes there were people that say, no, I believe the Earth is a sphere, or people say, no, I believe the Earth is flat. None of them has any point to prove until he came and say, well, how can I prove this? And he runs the experiment. That's it, man. There's a proof. Up to this point, if you still want to believe, it's your choice to believe. But this is what the, after a scientific method and an experiment and observation and all the calculation is showing you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way that we should always talk about science.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this conversation, this look into the history of physics. And if you have any questions, any thoughts, if you think the Earth is flat, we would love to hear any arguments that you have in the comments below. We would love for you to share your thoughts, and please, be part of this conversation as well. So leave any thoughts you have in the comments below. We want to thank you for joining us again today. We're going to continue next episode going further into the history of physics.
Yep.
But I want to remind you, if you head over to thatnerdycatholic.com, you can sign up for our email list to get updates on when we put out new content, any changes that happen. If you go over to thatnerdycatholic.com/merch, you can get t-shirts, mugs, and other things with cool nerdy things on them. If you head over to thatnerdycatholic.com/support, you can support us financially. And whether you buy some of our merch or support us directly through our support page, any financial help is greatly appreciated, and our thanks go out to you. So, Cesar, thanks again for a great discussion, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time, my brother. Bye.
Bye.
System shut down.